It began as a joke. That was the cruelest part of it. How the most dangerous things in Hogwarts so often arrive dressed as harmless fun. A whisper in a corridor, a wink from a portrait, a bit of contraband passed between hands, with the lazy confidence of children who believed the castle would always catch them before they truly fell. On a wet October evening in third year, the Marauder's map sat rolled in Fred Weasley's palm like a secret too pleased with itself. The parchment looked ordinary when it was asleep. Blank, faintly yellowed, edges softened by years of folding. If you held it up to the firelight, you could see nothing but the ghost of old creases. It could have been a homework sheet, a Muggle newspaper scrap, a thing forgotten and harmless. And yet, the moment Fred tapped it with his wand and murmured the familiar phrase, the parchment came alive like a creature rousing from a long nap. I solemnly swear that I am up to no good. Ink bloomed across it in delicate lines. Hallways unfurled. Staircases shifted into place. Dots appeared, hundreds of them, each named, each moving, each a tiny life in motion. It was always a small miracle, the way the map knew everyone, the way it held the whole school like a heartbeat under paper skin. George leaned closer, grinning. Still works. Fred's eyes glittered. Told you. They were in a narrow corridor behind the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy, one of their usual hiding spots. The air smelled like damp wool and candle smoke. Somewhere not far off, Peeves was cackling, a sound like a kettle boiling over. Harry stood between them, hands shoved into his pockets, trying to look casual and failing. He still wasn't used to being included in Weasley mischief, as if it was normal. He still wasn't used to people offering him things without expecting something back. So, Fred said, lowering his voice with theatrical seriousness, "This is it, the crown jewel." George held up a finger, the ultimate weapon against boredom, curfews, and Filch's deeply tragic existence. Harry's mouth twitched. "You sure you want to give it to me?" Fred waved a hand. "We've had our fun. Besides," he glanced around, then leaned in, "you're the one who needs it. You've got, you know, things." Harry's stomach tightened. Things. A black dog in the distance. A name whispered like a threat. Sirius Black on the loose, and everyone looking at Harry like he was a candle surrounded by wind. George clapped Harry's shoulder. "Consider it an early Christmas present." Harry hesitated just long enough for the old reflex to rise. Don't accept. Don't owe. Don't trust. Then he looked at their faces, bright, earnest under all the mischief, and he took the map. The parchment felt warm, not from hands, from something else, like it had been sitting near a living heart. Harry frowned slightly. "It's warm." Fred shrugged. "Probably from my charm." George grinned. "Or from all the rule-breaking." Harry smiled faintly, but the warmth didn't fade. If anything, it seemed to deepen, settling into his palm like the map was relieved to be held. He rolled it carefully and tucked it into his bag. They parted ways, laughing quietly, and Harry headed back toward Gryffindor Tower with the map pressed against his ribs, feeling absurdly comforted by it. Like carrying a secret, made the castle less big, less watching. That night, long after Ron had fallen asleep with his mouth open and Neville was muttering in his dreams, Harry climbed out of bed and sat by the common room fire with the map spread open in his lap. The flames had burned low. The room was quiet except for the occasional shift of a portrait frame and the soft sigh of the wind at the windows. Harry whispered, "I solemnly swear I am up to no good," and watched the ink blossom again. The corridors appeared, the moving dots, names he'd never noticed before, patterns of students drifting between dormitories and bathrooms, ghosts gliding through walls, Mrs. Norris prowling like a judgment on four legs. Harry leaned closer, fascinated. There, Filch, pacing near the trophy room. There, Snape, moving like a shadow toward the dungeons. And there, something that made Harry's breath catch. In the Slytherin common room, a dot labeled Peter Pettigrew lay very still. Harry blinked hard. His heart thudded once, heavy and wrong. Peter Pettigrew. That name didn't belong here. It belonged to stories adults told in low voices. Stories about betrayal and blood and the First War. It belonged to Sirius Black's file, to Remus Lupin's tight mouth when he thought Harry wasn't looking, to the photographs in the Prophet that made Harry's skin crawl. Peter Pettigrew was dead, wasn't he? Harry leaned closer until the parchment nearly brushed his nose. He traced the dot with a finger, eyes narrowing like he could force it to reveal the truth. The dot moved, just slightly, as if turning over in sleep. Harry's stomach dropped. He looked around the common room, as if someone might be watching him, as if the map might be a trap. But the room stayed empty. The fire crackled quietly. The portraits pretended not to notice. Harry stared at the dot again. Peter Pettigrew did not vanish. Harry's fingers tightened on the parchment. This was impossible. So, of course, like a proper Gryffindor with a death wish disguised as curiosity, Harry did the only thing that made sense. He followed it, he folded the map, slipped on his cloak, and crept out into the castle. The corridors were darker than usual, lit by the occasional torch that sputtered in drafts. The map guided him with eerie precision. Left here, right there. Wait. Filch at the end of the hall. Turn back. Hide behind a suit of armor. Harry moved like he'd been doing this his whole life, which was frightening in its own way. He reached the third-floor corridor and paused, heart hammering. The dot, labeled Peter Pettigrew, had shifted again. It wasn't in the Slytherin common room anymore. It was moving, and it was moving toward the castle's upper levels, toward Harry's breath caught. The dot was heading toward Gryffindor Tower. Harry stood frozen in a shadowed alcove, cloak pulled tight, mind racing. How could a dead man be walking through Hogwarts? How could the map be wrong? Unless it wasn't. Harry forced himself to move. He followed at a distance, watching the map as the dot progressed through corridors, turned corners, climbed staircases. And then the dot stopped. In the Gryffindor dormitory. In Harry's dormitory, Harry's blood went cold. He nearly ran, then forced himself to slow, because panic made noise and noise got you caught. He slipped into the common room, up the stairs, into the boys' dormitory. All 4 beds were there, all 4 shapes beneath blankets. Ron sprawled like he'd been thrown, Neville curled tight, Seamus half off his pillow, and Harry's bed empty. Harry stood at the foot of the room, cloak shimmering faintly in the moonlight, staring at the sleeping forms with a dread that crawled up his spine. The map in his hand trembled. No, not trembled. It pulsed. A faint throb through the parchment, like a heartbeat. Harry looked down sharply. The dot labeled Peter Pettigrew was not near any bed. It was on Ron's pillow. Harry's breath stopped. He stared at Ron's bed, at the lump beneath the covers, at the mop of red hair, the familiar shape of his best friend sleeping. His mind refused to connect the pieces. Ron couldn't be. Harry's eyes darted to the map again. The dot moved, not across the floor, but within the bed, like something small shifting position. Harry's stomach heaved. He took 1 step forward. The floorboard creaked. Ron stirred, mumbling. Harry froze. The dot shifted again, faster now, as if startled. Harry's hand clenched around the parchment so tightly the edges bit into his palm. He could wake Ron. He could pull the blankets off. He could grab his wand and do something. Anything. But he didn't, because some instinct in him screamed, that if he startled whatever was in Ron's bed, it would run. So Harry did the only thing he could do without waking the whole dormitory. He leaned closer, slowly, and whispered, barely audible, Pettigrew. The map pulsed again. And then, in the corner of Harry's vision, ink began to form on the parchment in a place it hadn't before. Not a corridor, not a name, a sentence. Hello, Harry. Harry went completely still. His heart slammed against his ribs. He stared at the words. His throat went dry. The map wasn't supposed to do that. It wasn't supposed to write back. Harry's fingers trembled. He swallowed hard and whispered, Who are you? Ink curled into place, neat and elegant, as if written by a hand with too much time. I am your friend. Harry's mouth opened, no sound coming out. Friend. He looked at Ron's sleeping face, at the innocent slackness of his features, at the way his hand hung over the edge of the bed. The dot, labeled Peter Pettigrew, sat right on his pillow like a secret. Harry's voice came out raw. That's not funny. The ink shifted, almost like it sighed. Oh, Harry, not funny. Necessary. Harry felt cold spread through him, slow and nauseating. His grip tightened on the map. What do you want? The answer appeared instantly, like it had been waiting. To help you, to show you what others hide, to make you strong. Harry's skin prickled. The map warmed in his hand again, warmer than before, almost comforting, almost inviting, like a hand on the back of his neck, steering him. Harry stared at it, breath shallow, mind screaming. This was wrong. This was dark. And yet, the dot on Ron's pillow, Peter Pettigrew, a dead name breathing in his best friend's bed. If this was true, then everything was wrong. If this was true, then the adults had lied, or they didn't know, or they'd been fooled. Harry's gaze flicked to Ron again, helpless and sleeping. The ink wrote softly, as if it could hear Harry's thoughts. You can save him. You can save everyone. But you must listen. Harry swallowed hard, a sick kind of certainty forming in his chest. He looked down at the map, and for the first time, without realizing it, Harry Potter did something that felt like reaching for a hand in the dark. He whispered, How? Harry did not sleep. He sat on the edge of his bed, with the invisibility cloak pulled around his feet. Like shed skin, the Marauder's map open across his knees, and his heart beat loud enough that he was certain it would wake the whole dormitory. Ron breathed in slow, uneven puffs. Neville shifted once, sighed, and went still again. Seamus made a small snorting noise and rolled over, and Harry stared at the dot labeled Peter Pettigrew sitting on Ron's pillow like a splinter under skin. He stared until his eyes burned. Then he stared at the words on the parchment. Hello, Harry. The ink looked fresh, darker than the usual lines of the map, like it had been written moments ago. It didn't smudge when Harry brushed his thumb over it, but it did something worse. It warmed, as if responding to touch, as if pleased to be acknowledged. Harry swallowed hard and leaned closer, whispering so softly the sound barely existed. How do you know my name? The answer appeared with smooth confidence, as if the map had been waiting for that particular question. I know every name in this castle. Harry's stomach turned. That's what you do, he whispered, half to himself. You show people on the map. The words formed slowly, deliberately, in the mind, in the heart, in the places you hide things even from yourself. Harry's fingers tightened so hard the parchment creased. He forced himself to breathe. This was the moment where sensible people would fold the map, shove it into a trunk, and find an adult. A professor, Dumbledore, McGonagall, someone with a title and an answer, and the authority to make terrifying things stop. Harry was not sensible, and besides, he had tried adults before. Adults had sent him back to the Dursleys. Adults had hidden the truth about his parents until it burst out of someone else's mouth. Adults had spent weeks this term whispering about Sirius Black, and never once told Harry exactly why he should be afraid, as if fear was safer than knowledge. And now this map, this impossible talking parchment, was offering him knowledge. Dangerous knowledge, but real. Harry looked at Ron again. Ron's freckles were faint in the moonlight. His hair a soft mess. He looked like a kid. He looked like Harry's friend, not like a hiding place. Harry's throat tightened. If that's Peter Pettigrew, Harry whispered, then what is he doing in here? The ink did not answer immediately. The parchment warmed under Harry's hands, like it was considering, like it was tasting the question. Then words appeared. Careful and almost gentle. He is close to you. He is closer than you think. He has been close for a long, long time. Harry's pulse jumped. The dot on Ron's pillow shifted, just a twitch, like a creature reacting to attention. Harry's skin crawled. Is he on Ron? Harry's voice shook. Is he possessing him? A pause. Then, not possessing, hiding, wearing. Harry's mind stumbled. Wearing. He glanced down at Ron's pillow, at the lump of blanket, at the edge of Ron's ear visible above the cover. Ron looked utterly ordinary. Harry looked back at the map, and his voice came out raw. What do you mean, wearing? The answer formed in a different style of ink, slightly slanted, as if written by someone with a theatrical flourish. You know animals can be more than animals, don't you? Harry froze. An emoji. He knew the word. He'd heard it in whispers from older students, and in the awed tone Fred and George used when they talked about legends. He'd never seen one that he knew of, but he knew it was possible. His mouth went dry. Peter Pettigrew was an animagus, Harry whispered. The map did not deny it. Yes. Harry's gaze snapped to Ron's bed again, suddenly seeing it differently. A rat. Scabbers. A shabby, half-bald, ancient rat that Ron kept in his pocket like a gross comfort. A rat that had survived far longer than any rat should. A rat that hated Crookshanks. Harry's stomach dropped into his feet. Scabbers. The dot labeled Peter Pettigrew was on Ron's pillow because Scabbers slept on Ron's pillow. Harry pressed his hand to his mouth, swallowing a wave of nausea. This was impossible, and yet it made a horrible kind of sense. Ron had told Harry Scabbers used to belong to Percy. Percy had had him for years. Before that, who knew? If Peter Pettigrew had been living as a rat, Harry's mind leapt, frantic, to the photographs in the Prophet. Sirius Black's gaunt face, his eyes, the words mass murderer. What if Sirius hadn't killed Peter? What if Peter had escaped? What if everyone had been wrong? Harry's breath came fast now, shallow and dizzying. He looked down at the map again. Why are you telling me this? He whispered. The ink flowed into place with unnerving smoothness. Because you are the only one who can act. Because you are the only one who will. Because you have something the others lack. Harry's fingers trembled. What? The map's warmth intensified like a hand pressing into his palm. Courage. Rage. A need to know. Harry flinched as if the parchment had touched something inside him. He stared at the words, trying to steady his thoughts. You're just a map, he whispered. A soft pause. Then, almost amused, I am much more than a map. Harry's throat tightened. What are you? The ink curled slowly, as if enjoying the question. A memory, a promise, a peace. Harry's skin went cold. A peace. He had heard that word before, spoken in a different context. Tom Riddle's diary, the way it had felt alive, the way it had spoken to Ginny, the way it had tried to pour itself into the world through her. Harry's mind flashed back to second year with sick clarity. The diary's silky voice, the feeling of being watched, the cold knowledge of how close Ginny had come to vanishing. Hermione had said the diary had been enchanted with dark magic. Dumbledore had said something stranger afterwards, when Harry and Ron had been too exhausted to argue. Something about the diary being more than a simple, enchanted object. Harry's mouth went dry. He stared at the map like it might open and swallow him. What kind of peace? Harry whispered. The parchment did not answer directly. Instead it wrote, "Do you trust me, Harry?" Harry's heart stuttered. He hated that question, hated that it landed in him like a hook, because the truth was, despite everything, a part of him wanted to say yes, wanted to reach for the certainty being offered, wanted to grab the thread and pull until the tangled world made sense. He didn't answer. He forced himself to do what Hermione would do. Ask another question. "How do I know you're not lying?" Harry whispered. The ink formed quickly. "Because I showed you truth, because you felt it, because you saw the name." Harry's jaw clenched. "That's not proof," he whispered. That's manipulation." A pause, longer this time. Then softer. "Call it what you like, but listen. If Pettigrew is here, then Black will come." Harry's blood went colder. "Sirius Black," Harry whispered. "Yes. He will hunt the rat. He will tear down anything in his way. He will reach you." Harry's grip tightened on the parchment, anger rising to meet fear. Sirius Black had tried to break into Gryffindor Tower. The fat lady had been slashed. Everyone said Sirius was coming for Harry. But what if Sirius was coming for Peter? Harry's mind spun. He glanced at Ron again, at the pillow, at the lump that might be Scabbers, or might be something else. If Scabbers was Peter Pettigrew, then Ron was unknowingly carrying a war criminal in his pocket. And if Sirius Black was hunting Peter Pettigrew, then maybe Sirius Black wasn't hunting Harry. Or maybe he was hunting both. Harry's thoughts tangled until they were a knot. He looked down at the map, and his voice came out harsh. "So what? You want me to, what, hand Scabbers over?" The map's ink flowed again, smooth as oil. "Not hand him over. Catch him. Expose him. You will be a hero again." Harry flinched, something sour twisting in his gut. "I don't want that," he whispered. The words appeared as if the map was smiling. "Of course you do. Not for applause, for justice, for revenge." Harry's throat tightened. Revenge. The word was a blade. Harry thought of James and Lily, thought of the way adults spoke about them with reverence, as if their deaths were a story with a moral rather than two people being ripped away. Harry thought of the way the Dursleys had treated him, the way he'd been raised on scraps of affection. He thought of Peter Pettigrew, if it was Peter, laughing with his parents, pretending to be a friend, and then selling them to Voldemort. Harry's hands shook. The map was right about one thing. He wanted revenge. The thought made him feel filthy. The map's warmth pressed into his palm like reassurance. "You are allowed to want it." Harry stared at the words, breathing hard. Somewhere deep in his mind, a small, sensible voice whispered, "This is wrong. This is not how good things talk." But another voice, older, angrier, lonelier, whispered back, "And yet it's true." Harry swallowed hard. He forced his gaze away from the map and toward Ron's bed. If Scabbers was Peter Pettigrew, Harry needed proof. He needed to see it. He needed to do something. But not here. Not now. Not in the dormitory where one wrong move woke Ron and turned this into chaos. Harry folded the map carefully, hands stiff. The parchment felt almost reluctant, like it didn't want to be closed. He tucked it into his robe pocket. Then he crawled back into bed, pulled the curtains shut, and lay there staring into darkness, while his mind raced until it burned. The map was warm against his chest. It felt like a secret heartbeat. And every time Harry tried to tell himself he would show a professor in the morning that he would do the right thing, the map's words lingered in his head like a promise. You are the only one who can act. You are the only one who will. Eventually, despite himself, Harry drifted into a light, uneasy sleep. He dreamed of corridors that moved like veins. He dreamed of dots that bled ink. He dreamed of his own name written again and again, as if the castle itself was learning it. When he woke, grey morning light filled the dormitory. Ron was already sitting up, rubbing his eyes. Morning? Ron yawned. Did you sleep all right? Harry's mouth went dry. He glanced at Ron's pillow. Scabbers was there, curled in a ball, looking like the same old rat. Mangy, sleepy, harmless. Harry stared too long. Ron frowned. What? Nothing, Harry said too quickly. Ron shrugged, scooped Scabbers up, and shoved him into his pocket like always. Harry felt his stomach twist. At breakfast, Hermione was already at the table with a stack of books, quill in hand, looking determined to destroy the term with homework. She glanced up as Harry and Ron slid onto the bench opposite her. Where did you go last night? Hermione asked immediately. Eyes sharp, Ron choked slightly on his toast. What? Hermione tapped her quill against her parchment. I heard someone walking in the dormitory corridor, and when I came down early, you looked like you'd been dragged through the lake, Harry. Harry forced a shrug, couldn't sleep. Hermione narrowed her eyes. Because of Sirius Black. Ron's face tightened. Don't start. Hermione rolled her eyes. I'm not starting anything. I'm asking. Harry's fingers clenched under the table. He could tell her. He should tell her. Hermione would know what to do. Hermione would go straight to McGonagall with evidence and logic and righteous fury. But Harry remembered the map's words, remembered how it had felt like the diary in a new skin, remembered how adults had handled the diary. Panic, secrecy, control. He imagined telling a professor and having the map taken away, locked up, for his own good, and then nothing would happen quickly enough. Peter would run. Sirius would strike. The war would swallow them again. Harry swallowed. Just couldn't sleep, he said. Hermione watched him for a long moment, then frowned and returned to her notes as if filing this away for later interrogation. Harry's eyes drifted to Ron's pocket, where Scabbers made a small, shifting movement. Ron didn't notice. Harry couldn't stop noticing. All day, Harry felt the map like a weight in his robe. Not heavy exactly. Present. Warm. Sometimes, when Harry's attention drifted, he swore he could feel it pulse once, like a reminder. That afternoon, Professor Lupin taught them about redcaps. The classroom smelled faintly of chalk and damp because it had rained again. Lupin looked tired, but he always looked tired. It was difficult to tell what was new fatigue and what was his natural shape. Harry watched Lupin carefully, trying to imagine this news in Lupin's face. Peter Pettigrew alive. Peter Pettigrew hiding as a rat. Sirius Black hunting him. Lupin's eyes swept the class as he spoke, warm and steady. When they landed on Harry, there was the usual gentle attentiveness. Nothing more. Harry couldn't tell. At the end of the lesson, Lupin stopped Harry as the others filed out. Harry, he said softly. A word? Hermione and Ron turned, startled. Hermione looked immediately suspicious. It's all right, Lupin said, gentle. Just a moment. Ron hesitated, then left with Hermione, who kept glancing back. When the classroom was nearly empty, Lupin closed the door with a quiet click. The silence made Harry's skin prickle. Lupin leaned against his desk. "You look like you haven't slept," he said. Harry forced himself to shrug. "Nightmares." Lupin's gaze softened. "About?" Harry's throat tightened. He thought of the green flash. He thought of the scar. He thought of the map whispering his name. He also thought of the dot, labeled Peter Pettigrew, on Ron's pillow. He chose the safest lie. "About my parents." Lupin's face tightened with something like pain, quick and controlled. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Harry nodded, eyes on the floor, heart hammering. Lupin hesitated, then said, "If you ever need to talk—" "I'm fine," Harry blurted. Lupin blinked, then nodded slowly. "All right." Harry turned to leave, desperate to escape the room. The questions, the feeling that Lupin was reading him. Then Lupin spoke again, very softly. "Be careful with gifts," Lupin said. Harry froze. He turned slowly. "What?" Lupin's gaze held his, calm but intent. "Sometimes," Lupin said, choosing his words like they mattered, "objects that offer you what you want can ask for more than you realize." Harry's blood went cold. Had Lupin seen the map? Had he sensed something? Had the map reached him? Harry's hand twitched toward his pocket where the parchment lay warm. Lupin watched the motion, and for a second his expression tightened as if he'd seen exactly what Harry was hiding. But he didn't say it. He simply repeated, softer, "Be careful." Harry swallowed hard. "Okay," he whispered. He fled. That evening, after dinner, Ron and Hermione went to the common room to argue about Crookshanks again. Ron still furious that Hermione's cat kept trying to eat Scabbers. Hermione still insisting cats were natural predators, and Ron should stop overreacting. Harry barely heard them. He sat in a corner by the fire, pretending to do homework, while the map pressed against his chest like a secret. The warm pulse came again, faint but insistent. He waited. He didn't know what he was waiting for until it arrived. Later, when the common room had thinned and the fire had burned low again, Harry slipped away under the cloak and went to an empty classroom on the second floor. One with a lock that didn't quite work if you jiggled it. One with a window that looked out over the grounds where the lake reflected the moon like a blade. He spread the map on the dusty teacher's desk. "I solemnly swear I am up to no good," he whispered. The corridors bloomed. The dots appeared. Names drifted and shifted like a living thing. Harry's eyes went straight to Ron. Ron Weasley, moving in the Gryffindor common room, and in his pocket. Peter Pettigrew. The dot moved slightly, then stopped, as if aware Harry was looking. Harry felt his skin crawl. He swallowed hard and whispered, "Talk to me." The ink formed with immediate satisfaction. "Of course, Harry. You came back." Harry's jaw clenched. "I came back because I need to know." The map's lines seemed to shimmer faintly, almost like the parchment breathed. "And I want you to know. Tell me what you want, Harry." Harry's throat tightened. "I want proof." Ink flowed, smooth as oil. "Then take him." Harry's stomach dropped. "What?" "Take the rat. Not by force in front of your friends. Not with shouting and panic. Quietly. Bring him somewhere private. Make him show you what he is." Harry stared at the words. "You mean transform him?" Harry whispered. "Yes, he can be forced." The map's warmth deepened, almost soothing, but it requires pressure. Fear, pain, if needed. Harry flinched. He thought of the diary again. How it had urged. How it had suggested. How it had pushed Ginny a little further each time until she wasn't sure what thoughts were hers. Harry's fingers trembled. I'm not going to hurt Ron, Harry whispered fiercely. The ink appeared immediately, almost offended. You won't hurt Ron. You will help him. You will remove the parasite. Harry's breath came fast. This was insane. And yet Crookshanks had been trying to get Scabbers for weeks. As if the cat knew. As if animals could smell the lie. And Sirius Black, if the map was right, would come for the rat eventually. If Harry didn't act first, the rat might die, and with it, the truth. Harry's stomach twisted. He leaned closer and whispered, "How do I force him?" The map seemed to hesitate, then wrote, "There are spells, there are ways, but the easiest is to trap him." A cage that responds to names. Harry frowned. What does that mean? Ink curled into place, almost pleased. Write his true name on the cage. Speak it. The magic will pull him toward it like gravity. Harry's mouth went dry. That sounds like, he started, then stopped, like old magic, like binding charms, like things Hermione would hate because they weren't clean. Harry swallowed hard. Where do I get something like that? The map's answer appeared without hesitation, as if it had already prepared the path. The trophy room. Case 3. A silver box that once held a serpent's fang. It remembers how to bind. Harry stared at the words, chill running through him. A serpent's fang. That sounded too much like last year. Like the basilisk. Like poison and the diary's death. Harry's hand trembled as he hovered over the parchment. Why do you know that? He whispered. Because I have been here a long time. Because I remember the castle's secrets. Because secrets are my food. Harry's breath hitched. Food. The map's warmth spread into Harry's fingers as if it enjoyed the word. You are full of them, Harry. So full. Harry jerked his hand back as if burned. His heart hammered. The map lay open, innocent in appearance, but the lines seemed darker now, the ink more vivid, as if it had grown by being read. Harry stared at it, breathing hard. This was wrong. He knew it was wrong. And yet the image of Peter Pettigrew living as a rat in Ron's pocket made Harry's stomach twist with such sick fury that the wrongness felt distant. Harry forced himself to speak, voice shaking. If I do this, if I take Scabbers and prove it, what then? The map's answer came immediately. Then you go to Lupin. He will believe you. Then you find Black, and you decide what justice looks like. Harry swallowed hard. Justice, revenge, truth. Harry stared down at the moving dots. They looked so small, so harmless, and yet each dot was a life, a secret, a lie. He watched Professor Snape moving through the corridors below, like a dark stain. He watched Professor McGonagall in her office, still awake. He watched Dumbledore's dot absent, not in the castle. He watched himself, Harry Potter, standing alone in an empty classroom with a map that whispered like a friend. A sudden wave of loneliness hit him so hard he nearly swayed. He thought of how easy it would be to let the map guide him, to let it decide, to stop carrying the burden of choosing. Harry swallowed hard and whispered, "Why me?" The ink formed slowly this time, as if the map wanted to savor the answer. Because you are already marked, because you already live with a piece of death inside you, because you will understand me. Harry went cold. He stared at the words until the room blurred. A piece of death inside you. His scar throbbed faintly, a dull ache like a bruise pressed too hard. Harry's hands shook. He whispered, "What do you mean?" The map did not answer. Not directly. Instead, it wrote one final line, neat and quiet. "Bring me secrets, and I will bring you truth." Harry sat back, breathing hard, staring at the parchment. He could almost hear Hermione's voice in his head. This is dangerous, Harry. This is exactly how dark magic works. It offers you what you want, and then it takes. He could almost hear Ron. Mate, you're mental. It's just a map. He could almost hear Lupin. Be careful with gifts. Harry's gaze drifted to the window, to the moonlit grounds, to the dark shape of the whomping willow in the distance. Sirius Black was out there somewhere. And Peter Pettigrew was in his best friend's pocket. Harry looked back down at the map. He folded it slowly, carefully, like closing the mouth of a creature that might bite. Then he stood, shoved it into his robe, and left the classroom with a new, awful plan forming in his mind. Tomorrow he would go to the trophy room. Tomorrow he would find the silver box. Tomorrow the map would get what it wanted. Because Harry Potter, for all his courage, had never been good at resisting a doorway labeled truth. The next day moved like a normal day on the surface. That was how Hogwarts always did it. Breakfast happened. Lessons happened. People complained about homework and Quidditch practice, and the weather. The castle kept being a castle, as if it didn't care what secrets crawled through its halls. Harry walked through it all, like he was underwater. He laughed when Ron made a joke. He nodded when Hermione scolded them for not finishing their essays. He even answered Professor Snape's questions in potions, with a dull, obedient voice, while his mind stayed fixed on a single image. A silver box in the trophy room. Case 3, waiting like a trap with a memory. The Marauder's map rested warm against his chest the entire day. A small, insistent pressure that made it difficult to forget his plan, even for a second. Every time Harry's courage wavered, he felt the faint pulse through the parchment, like the map was reassuring him that he was still on the right path. Or nudging him. At lunch, Hermione leaned across the table, eyes narrowed. "You're being weird," she said. Ron frowned. "He's always weird." Hermione ignored Ron. "No, different weird." Harry forced a shrug. "I'm fine." Hermione's gaze sharpened. "You said that when you were hiding a dragon." Ron blinked. "We weren't hiding a dragon." Hermione stared at him. "Yes, we were." Ron spluttered, indignant. "We were helping Hagrid." "It's not the same." Hermione's eyes stayed on Harry. "Harry," she said quietly, voice edged with concern, "if you've found something about Sirius Black, please tell us." If he told her, Hermione would do what Hermione always did. Pull the situation into daylight and nail it to a board with facts until it stopped wriggling. And Harry wanted that. He wanted the truth out loud. He wanted someone else to carry it. But he could still feel the map's words like a thread around his wrist. "You are the only one who will." Harry glanced at Ron's pocket. Scabbers was asleep, a small lump, harmless looking. Ron absent-mindedly tapped the pocket once, like it was a familiar comfort. Harry forced himself to look away. "I haven't found anything," Harry lied. Hermione held his gaze for a long moment. Then she leaned back, lips pressed tight, and returned to her food as if she hadn't heard him. But Harry saw her hand tighten around her fork, knuckles whitening. She didn't believe him. Later, as the day dragged toward evening, Harry waited for a moment when Ron would be distracted. He needed Scabbers alone, not because he wanted to hurt Ron, but because he couldn't risk Ron's reaction. Ron would panic. Ron would argue. Ron would refuse to believe that the mangy rat he'd carried for years was a person. And if Scabbers was Peter Pettigrew, panic was exactly what the rat would use. The opportunity came after dinner. Hermione had dragged Ron to the library with the promise of helping him with his transfiguration essay, which really meant she was going to force him to write full sentences instead of insulting McGonagall under his breath. Ron went with the tragic resignation of a man marching to execution. Harry stayed behind in the common room, pretending to read. He watched the map under the table with a quick whisper, checking the dots. Ron Weasley was in the library. Peter Pettigrew was with him. Harry's heart hammered. He waited until the map showed Ron leaving the library and heading toward Gryffindor Tower, Hermione beside him, both of them moving slowly, because Hermione was still lecturing, and Ron was still trying to look like he wasn't listening. Harry moved. He slipped under the invisibility cloak, rolled the map tightly, and left the common room before Ron returned. He moved through corridors with the silent urgency of someone doing something he knew he shouldn't. The trophy room sat on the second floor, glittering and silent, full of polished cups and plaques that commemorated victories Harry didn't care about. At this hour, it was empty, the air still and cold, the moonlight slanting through tall windows and catching on metal until it felt like the room was full of pale eyes. Harry stood in the doorway under the cloak, heart hammering so hard he could feel it in his throat. He took a slow breath. Then he walked in. His footsteps echoed softly on the stone. The room smelled like dust and old pride. The trophies gleamed like teeth. He moved toward the display cases along the left wall, counting under his breath. Case 1, Case 2, Case 3. Harry stopped. Inside Case 3 sat a small silver box, no larger than a loaf of bread, decorated with twisting engravings that might have been vines or might have been snakes. It looked old, older than most of the trophies, like it belonged to a different era of Hogwarts when people collected darker souvenirs. The box had no label. Harry stared at it, throat tight, a serpent's fang. It remembers how to bind. Harry swallowed hard and glanced down at the map still rolled in his hand. The parchment was warm, almost hot now, like it was eager. Harry's stomach turned. He forced himself to act quickly before he could think himself out of it. He lifted his wand and whispered, Alohomora. The lock on the case clicked open. Harry slid the glass panel aside and reached in. The moment his fingers touched the silver box, pain flared across his palm, sharp and sudden like a bite. Harry sucked in a breath and nearly dropped it. The box was cold, but the cold didn't feel like metal. It felt like winter pressed directly against skin. Harry pulled his hand back and looked. A thin line of blood had appeared along the edge of his palm, as if something inside the box had a hidden tooth. Harry stared at the blood, breath shallow. Then, slowly, a whisper brushed through his mind. Not in words at first, in sensation. A memory of hunger, a memory of being held, a memory of something alive trapped inside something dead. Harry's scar prickled. He clenched his jaw and forced the box into his other hand, the one that wasn't bleeding. The cold seeped into his fingers immediately. He closed the case again and relocked it with a quick flick, then backed away, cloak still over him. The silver box sat in his palm like a secret with weight. Harry left the trophy room and moved quickly back through the corridors, head down, ears straining for any sound of Filch or Mrs. Norris. He made it to an empty classroom near the Charms corridor and locked the door behind him. Only then did he allow himself to breathe. He set the silver box on a desk and stared at it. It looked innocuous, almost pretty. And yet Harry could still feel that first sting in his palm, the way it had felt like the box recognized him, as if it had been waiting for someone like him. Harry's hand throbbed where the skin had split. A single drop of blood slid down his palm and hit the desk. The sound was tiny, but the moment it landed, the silver box shivered. Harry froze. The engravings on its surface seemed to darken, as if absorbing the blood's presence. The air in the room tightened. Harry swallowed. He pulled the Marauder's map out and unrolled it carefully beside the box. The parchment was warmer than ever, almost feverish. Harry whispered, I solemnly swear I am up to no good. The map bloomed open. Corridors appeared. Dots moved. Names pulsed. And then, without Harry asking, ink began to write near the edge. Good. Harry's stomach dropped. You knew I'd do it, he whispered. Of course. The words formed with a kind of satisfied certainty. Harry clenched his jaw. Tell me what this box is. The ink curled in slow, elegant strokes. A vessel, a binder, a mouth that closes around a name and does not let go. Harry's throat tightened. How do I use it? The map seemed to hesitate, then wrote, Open it. Write the true name inside. Speak it. The magic will pull the hidden thing toward its truth. Harry stared at the silver box, cold and silent on the desk. His hand trembled. Open it. Something in him recoiled at the idea. It felt like opening a coffin, like waking something that had been sleeping for a reason. But he'd already stepped onto this path. Harry reached for the box. The cold bit into his fingers again. The sting in his wounded palm flared, as if the box wanted that hand, wanted the blood. Harry forced himself to use his other hand and lift the lid. The box opened without resistance. Inside, there was not a fang. There was ash, a fine grey ash that looked like it had once been paper or bone, or something that had burned completely and left only the memory of shape behind. And in the center of the ash lay a single object, a tiny curved claw, blackened at the tip. Harry's breath caught. It looked like a fragment of something living and sharp, like it had been ripped off a creature in struggle. Harry's scar throbbed faintly again. He stared into the box and felt a cold certainty bloom in his gut. This wasn't a trophy. This was evidence of something the castle had buried. Harry's voice came out hoarse. What is that? The map's answer formed slowly, as if savoring the reveal. A piece of the basilisk. Harry's blood went ice cold. He stared at the blackened claw. He remembered the basilisk's jaw, the size of it, the way its fang had dripped venom that melted stone. He remembered the smell of the chamber, the way Ginny had looked, too pale, too still. How is that here? Harry whispered. The map wrote, a serpent died. Its poison changed things. Pieces were taken, kept, used. Harry's stomach turned. Used. Harry stared at the box, then at the map. Is this? Harry couldn't quite form the question, because saying it felt like giving it power. Is this dark? The ink appeared immediately. Everything powerful is dark to someone. Harry's jaw clenched. That's not an answer. The map's lines shimmered faintly, almost like a laugh. It is an answer. You just don't like it. Harry's fingers curled into fists. He forced himself to breathe slowly. Fine, he whispered. If it binds names, then we can use it on Pettigrew. Yes, the word appeared like a promise. You will take the rat. You will open the box. You will write Peter Pettigrew. And the rat will have no choice but to come. Harry stared at the ash. What happens then? He whispered. What does it do to him? The map's ink flowed in a neat line. It drags truth to the surface, no matter how much it hurts. Harry flinched. He thought of Ron, thought of how Ron had looked at breakfast, half asleep, ordinary. Thought of Ron's laughter, his loyalty, his constant presence. Harry did not want Ron to be hurt by any of this. But he also didn't want Ron to keep carrying a traitor in his pocket. Harry swallowed hard. He looked down at his bleeding hand, then at the ash. What do I write with? He whispered. The map's answer came softly. You already have ink. Harry's stomach lurched. No, Harry whispered. The map did not argue. It simply warmed, as if waiting. Harry stared at his palm. A thin cut. A small amount of blood. It would be easy. A smear, a name. He could do it quickly, then clean it up, then pretend it never happened. Harry's breath came fast. This was exactly how it started with the diary, he thought wildly. Little steps, just writing, just listening, just doing what it suggested, because it felt necessary. Harry's hand shook. He forced himself to close the box, lid snapping shut with a soft click. He shoved it aside, as if distance would make it less hungry. No, Harry said aloud, voice shaking. I'm not doing blood magic. The map's ink formed slowly, like a patient friend. Then use ordinary ink. But blood is stronger. Harry's throat tightened. He looked at the map with a kind of fury. Stop. The parchment pulsed once, then stilled, as if offended. Harry stood in the empty classroom, breathing hard, feeling trapped by his own decision. He couldn't put this back now. He couldn't unknow what he knew. He needed a middle path. He needed Hermione. The thought hit him like a spell. Hermione would hate this. Hermione would call it reckless, dangerous, stupid. Hermione would also solve it faster than Harry could alone. But telling Hermione meant risking the map being taken away, and Harry's fear of losing control flared immediately. Not control over the situation, control over the truth, because the map was the only thing that had given him the truth so far. Harry swallowed hard. He glanced at the map again. It wrote, almost gently, "You don't need her." Harry's skin prickled. He felt the manipulation like a hand on his spine. "Yes, I do," Harry whispered, and the words surprised him with how certain they were. He rolled the map up quickly, ignoring the warmth, and shoved it into his pocket. He took the silver box, wrapped it in his spare jumper, and stuffed it into his bag. Then he left the classroom, cloak over his shoulders, moving fast. He found Hermione in the library, of course. She was at their usual table, surrounded by books, writing a paragraph with aggressive neatness. Ron sat opposite her, looking half dead, his quill hovering over his parchment, like it was a weapon he didn't trust. Hermione didn't look up until Harry slid into the seat beside her. "You vanished," Hermione said immediately. Again. Ron looked up, relieved to have a distraction. "Where have you been?" Harry glanced around quickly. Madame Pince prowled the aisles like a vulture guarding paper. No one was close enough to hear, but Harry still lowered his voice. "I need to talk," he whispered. Hermione's eyes sharpened instantly. "About what?" Harry's mouth went dry. He looked at Ron. Ron frowned. "What? Why are you looking at me like that?" Harry's heart hammered. He could not say it in front of Ron. He couldn't. Not yet. So Harry did the next best thing, clumsy and desperate. "Hermione," he whispered, "can you come with me? Now. Alone." Ron's face tightened. "Oi." Hermione glanced at Ron, then at Harry's expression. Something in her shifted. Alertness, concern, the instinct that Harry's weirdness had become something heavier. "All right," she said, pushing her chair back. Ron looked betrayed. "What about my essay?" Hermione grabbed her parchment and shoved it at him. "Write the introduction, properly. If it's one sentence, I'll hex you." Ron grumbled, but he obeyed, muttering insults under his breath. Harry and Hermione slipped out of the library together, moving quickly through corridors until Harry found an empty alcove near a suit of armor that didn't snore too loudly. Hermione crossed her arms. "All right," she said briskly. "What is it?" Harry's hands trembled. He pulled the Marauder's map out of his robe and unrolled it in front of her. Hermione's eyes widened. Where did you get that?" "Fred and George," Harry said quickly. "But that's not the point." Hermione stared at the parchment, then looked back at Harry. "Harry, Do you realize how much trouble? Hermione, Harry cut in, voice shaking. The map showed me something. Hermione's mouth tightened. Showed you what? Harry swallowed hard. He leaned in and whispered, Peter Pettigrew. Hermione froze. Her face went blank in the way it did when her mind tried to reject impossible facts. Then her brows drew together sharply. What did you just say? Harry's voice was barely audible. The map showed Peter Pettigrew, alive, in the dormitory, on Ron's pillow. Hermione stared at him like he'd grown another head. That's Harry. Peter Pettigrew is dead. I know, Harry whispered, desperate. But the map, Hermione, it writes back. It talked to me. Hermione's eyes went huge. What? Harry's breath came fast. He held the map out, hands shaking. Look. Hermione took the map cautiously, like it might bite. Harry whispered the phrase, I solemnly swear I am up to no good. The map bloomed open. Hermione's eyes darted across it, scanning names and corridors with the speed of a mind made for patterns. Harry watched her face change as she found Ron. And then, as she saw the dot, Peter Pettigrew, Hermione's hand flew to her mouth. Oh, she whispered, horrified. Harry's throat tightened. You see it? Hermione nodded, eyes wide and shining. I see it. Harry felt a sick kind of relief. He wasn't imagining it. He wasn't alone. Then Hermione's gaze snapped to Harry, fierce and urgent. Harry, she whispered, this is enormous. This changes everything. We have to go to Professor McGonagall immediately. Harry flinched. Wait. Hermione frowned. Wait. Why would we wait? Harry's voice came out rough. Because the map told me to do something, and it felt like... He swallowed. It felt like the diary. Hermione went very still. Her eyes narrowed. What did it tell you to do? Harry hesitated, then pulled his bag strap tighter like it could anchor him. It told me to take Scabbers, Harry whispered, and force him to transform. It told me about a thing in the trophy room. A silver box. It wanted me to use it. Hermione's expression hardened into immediate alarm. What kind of box? Harry's mouth went dry. It had a piece of the basilisk inside. Hermione's face drained of color. Harry. I know, Harry whispered. I know it's bad. I didn't do it. Hermione's eyes flashed. You went to the trophy room alone. Harry didn't deny it. Hermione's voice rose slightly. Then she caught herself and lowered it again. Furious and shaking. You could have been caught. You could have been cursed. That could have been a trap. I had to know, Harry whispered, and the words sounded like a weak excuse even to him. Hermione stared at him, breathing hard. Then she looked down at the map again, at the dot, labeled Peter Pettigrew. Her anger warred with logic. Finally, she said, voice tight, All right, we do this properly. We go to a professor. Not alone. Not with you trying to play hero. Harry swallowed. Which professor? Hermione didn't hesitate. Lupin. Harry's stomach dropped. Lupin? Hermione nodded sharply. He knew James and Sirius. He would know Peter. And he's the only one who might understand why the map is behaving like that. Her eyes flicked to Harry's face. And he warned you, didn't he? About gifts. Harry's throat tightened. Yeah. Hermione's gaze sharpened. Then he already suspects something. We go to him tonight. Harry nodded, relief and dread mixing. Then, without warning, the map warmed in Hermione's hands. Not a little. A surge of heat, like a pulse of living skin. Hermione flinched. Harry, ink began to form on the parchment, not in the usual map script, but in that darker, fresher writing Harry had seen. "Hello, Hermione." Hermione went rigid. Harry's blood turned cold. Hermione stared at the words, then whispered, horrified, "It knows my name." Harry's voice came out raw. "It knows everything," the map wrote again, smoothly. "Brightest witch. Clever girl. You see now." Hermione's face twisted with disgust. "Do not speak to me," she hissed under her breath. The ink didn't stop. "You will ruin this. You will take the truth away from Harry and hand it to adults who will bury it." Hermione's eyes flashed. It is true. You did it last year. You went to professors. You trusted systems. And Ginny almost died." Hermione's breath hitched. Her face went pale with remembered terror and guilt. Harry felt his own stomach twist. The map was aiming for the wound. Hermione's voice shook, but she forced it steady. Ginny survived. Barely. The word appeared like a knife. Harry watched Hermione's hands tremble on the parchment. He wanted to rip the map away, to crumple it, to throw it into the fire. But he also saw Hermione fighting the same pull he had felt. The urge to argue, to engage, to prove it wrong to win. And engaging was exactly what the map wanted. Hermione inhaled sharply, then snapped the map shut with a decisive motion. The warmth vanished instantly, leaving the parchment cold and blank again. Hermione held it like it might try to open itself. Her eyes met Harry's. "It's not just showing us things," Hermione whispered. It's trying to steer us." Harry swallowed hard. "Yeah." Hermione's jaw clenched. "Then we don't let it." She thrust the folded map back into Harry's hands, like it was contaminated. "We go to Lupin," Hermione said, voice firm and shaking. "Tonight. And Harry, listen to me. Do not open that map again until we're with him." Harry hesitated, because the map was warm against his palm again, like a pet that wanted stroking, like a friend that didn't like being excluded. Harry swallowed. Then he nodded. "Okay." Hermione exhaled, a tight sound. They stood in the corridor alcove, both breathing too fast, both suddenly aware of how small they were inside a castle full of ancient magic and older hunger. Hermione's eyes flicked toward Ron's direction, guilt flashing. "We can't tell Ron yet," she whispered. Harry nodded. "Not until we know." Hermione swallowed hard. "All right." Then she looked at Harry, and her expression softened just slightly, the anger replaced by something steadier. "You did the right thing telling me," Hermione said quietly. Harry felt his throat tighten. "I wasn't sure." Hermione's mouth tightened. "You should have told me sooner." "But yes, you did." Harry nodded, grateful and ashamed at the same time. They returned to the library, faces composed as best they could manage, and sat down like nothing had changed. Ron complained about his essay. Hermione snapped at him once. Harry stared at the parchment in his pocket, like it was a sleeping snake. Time crawled. At last, the library began to empty. Ron grumbled about going to bed. Hermione pretended to pack her books slowly, waiting for the moment Ron would leave. When he finally did, yawning and shoving Scabbers deeper into his pocket, Harry's stomach clenched hard enough to hurt. Hermione waited until Ron was out of sight. Then she looked at Harry and whispered, "Now." They moved, quietly, quickly. They slipped through corridors, under the cloak, the map unopened, like an accused object. They climbed stairs, turned corners, and reached the defense against the dark arts classroom. The door was closed. A faint glow came from beneath it. Someone was inside. Hermione raised her hand to knock, then froze, because the doorknob was already turning. The door opened, Professor Lupin stood there, wand in hand, as if he'd been waiting. His eyes swept over them, Hermione under the cloak with Harry, both of them pale and tense. Then his gaze dropped to Harry's pocket, where the map's folded shape pressed against the fabric. Lupin's expression tightened. Very softly, he said, "I was wondering how long it would take." Lupin let them in without another word. The defense classroom felt different at night. Smaller, quieter, stripped of the daytime noise that made it feel safe. The windows were black mirrors. The desks sat in rows like silent witnesses. A single lamp burned on Lupin's desk, its warm circle of light making the rest of the room look even darker by contrast. Harry slipped the cloak off as soon as the door shut. Hermione did too, shaking her hair out like she could shake off fear. Lupin's gaze stayed on Harry's pocket. "Put it on the desk," Lupin said quietly. Harry's hand tightened around the folded parchment, without meaning to. The map warmed faintly under his palm, like it could sense Lupin's presence, like it recognized him. Hermione stepped forward sharply. "Professor, I know what it is," Lupin said. His voice wasn't angry. That almost made Harry more nervous. Lupin sounded like a man speaking to a weapon he'd seen before. Harry swallowed hard and placed the folded map on Lupin's desk. The moment it touched the wood, the lamp flame flickered. Lupin's eyes narrowed slightly. Hermione's voice rushed out, quick and urgent. It wrote to him. It wrote to both of us. It showed Peter Pettigrew alive on Ron's bed. And then it started telling Harry what to do, and slowly, Lupin said, raising a hand. Hermione stopped mid-breath, glaring, then forced herself to inhale through her nose, like she was trying not to explode. Lupin looked at Harry. "Tell me," he said softly. "From the beginning." Harry's throat tightened. The words felt heavy and slippery at the same time. Truth that would change the shape of everything. Truth that might be taken from him the second he said it aloud. Still, he spoke. He told Lupin about the map being worn, about the name appearing, Peter Pettigrew, about the writing, about the feeling that it wasn't just showing him things, but watching him back. Hermione filled in the details Harry missed, furious and precise. She told Lupin about the silver box, the ash, the basilisk fragment. She described the map's tone, the way it pushed at guilt and fear like it knew exactly where to press. Lupin listened without interrupting, face still, hands folded loosely on the desk. But as they spoke, something in his expression shifted. Small changes, tightening at the eyes, the mouth. Not surprise, not disbelief, recognition. When Harry finished, silence stretched. The lamp burned steady again. The classroom felt like it was holding its breath. Lupin exhaled slowly. "That," he said quietly, "is not supposed to happen." Hermione's voice was sharp. "So it's cursed." Lupin's gaze flicked to her. "Not in the simple way you mean." Harry's stomach sank. "You know something." Lupin looked at the folded map as if it were a sleeping animal. "I know what the map was," he said, "and I know what it should be." Hermione's eyes narrowed. What was it? Lupin's mouth tightened, pain flickering through his face so briefly, Harry almost missed it. "It was made by 4 students," Lupin said softly. "Exceptionally talented, exceptionally reckless." Harry's heart hammered. "The Marauders." Lupin's gaze lifted to Harry, and for a moment something warm flickered there. Something like grief softened by memory. "Yes," Lupin said. "The Marauders." Harry swallowed. "You were one of them." Hermione inhaled sharply. Lupin's expression didn't change. "Yes," he admitted. Hermione stared at him, stunned. "You, Professor." "I wasn't always a professor," Lupin said quietly. the faintest dry humor in his voice. And Hogwarts wasn't always as careful as it pretends to be. Harry stared at him, mind racing. Lupin, James, Sirius, Peter. The names lined up like a row of dominoes. Peter Pettigrew. Alive. Harry's voice came out raw. So the map. It's yours. Lupin shook his head slightly. Not mine. Ours. His gaze flicked away. It should never have left our possession. But after school, it did. And then his jaw tightened. And then everything fell apart. Hermione's voice cut in, quick and sharp. So why is it writing like that? Why is it acting like Tom Riddle's diary? Lupin went very still at the mention of the diary. Harry watched Lupin's face carefully. Lupin had been teaching at Hogwarts when the diary had happened. He must have known. Hermione pressed, relentless. That diary was dark. It was a piece of a person. It tried to use Ginny. This feels the same. Lupin's eyes closed briefly, like the words hurt. Then he opened them and looked straight at Harry. Harry, Lupin said quietly, you need to tell me something. Harry's stomach clenched. What? Has it ever mentioned pieces? Lupin asked. Harry's throat went dry. He glanced at Hermione, who stiffened. Harry nodded slowly. Yes. Lupin's face tightened. Hermione's voice shook. Professor, what are you saying? Lupin didn't answer immediately. He reached for the map. Harry's hand twitched, instinctively protective. Lupin noticed. His gaze softened. I'm not going to take it away, he said quietly. Not yet. But I need to see something. Harry hesitated. Then he forced himself to nod and let Lupin pick the parchment up. Lupin held it carefully, like it might bite or bleed. He tapped it with his wand. I solemnly swear that I am up to no good, Lupin murmured. The ink bloomed. Corridors unfurled. Dots appeared, moving with quiet precision. Names floated in neat script. Lupin's eyes swept the map quickly. Trained, Harry watched his face change as he found Ron's dot, and then found the one on Ron. Peter Pettigrew. Lupin went completely still. For a heartbeat, Harry thought Lupin might faint. Then Lupin's hand tightened around the parchment so hard his knuckles went white. Hermione whispered, voice shaking, You believe it. He stared at the dot, labeled Peter Pettigrew, with the expression of a man staring at a ghost he'd spent 12 years trying to bury. His throat worked once. Then, very softly, he said, He's alive. Harry's breath hitched. The words felt like the world tilting. Lupin swallowed hard and forced himself to look up. Harry, he said hoarsely, if that's true, if Peter Pettigrew is alive, then Sirius Black. Harry's heart slammed. He didn't do it, Harry whispered. Lupin's eyes flickered with something like agony. No, he said, he didn't. Hermione's voice was fierce. Then the Ministry has been wrong for 12 years. Lupin's mouth tightened. Yes. Silence stretched again, heavier this time. Then Harry whispered, So what do we do? Lupin looked back down at the map, and his voice turned grim and practical. We keep everyone safe, he said. We confirm this beyond a moving dot. We make sure Peter cannot run, and we do not. His gaze flicked to Harry sharply. We do not take advice from a talking piece of parchment. Hermione nodded sharply. Agreed. Harry's throat tightened, but it knew. Lupin's eyes softened, but his voice stayed firm. It knew because it's connected to the castle. It knows where people are. It knows patterns. And if it's been altered by dark magic, Hermione's voice cut in. Then it's dangerous. Lupin nodded. Yes. Harry's stomach twisted. Is it? A Horcrux. The word hung in the air like smoke. Hermione's eyes went huge. Harry, Lupin, went very still. He didn't say no. Harry felt his blood turn to ice. Lupin's voice was quiet. Horcrux is a very old word, he said carefully. And a very dangerous one. Hermione's voice shook, furious and frightened. Professor, answer him. Lupin's gaze flicked to her, then back to Harry. He looked tired. So tired, Harry suddenly understood why. Lupin was carrying years of loss inside him, and now the past had just walked back into his life on a rat's paws. I don't know, Lupin said honestly. But he hesitated, then spoke like it hurt to say the words. It feels wrong, in a way the map never did. Hermione swallowed. So someone tampered with it. Lupin nodded slowly. Yes. Harry's hands trembled. Who? Lupin's eyes darkened. There are a few possibilities. He looked down at the dot labeled Peter Pettigrew, but one is particularly likely. Hermione's voice was barely audible. Sirius? Lupin's jaw clenched. No, he said quickly. Sirius wouldn't. His eyes flickered with pain. He wouldn't have had the time or the secrecy, and he'd never do that to James's child. Harry's stomach twisted. Then who? Lupin's gaze lifted slowly, and the answer in his eyes made Harry's blood go cold before the words even came. Peter, Lupin said quietly. Peter had access. Peter had motive. Peter had a talent for hiding his true shape. Hermione's mouth fell open. You think Peter turned the map into a Horcrux? Lupin's voice was rough. Not alone, perhaps. But yes, it's possible. Harry's scar prickled again. Faint, but insistent. Hermione's mind was already racing. But why would he do that? What does he gain from a haunted map? Lupin's gaze dropped to the parchment in his hand. Influence, he said. A way to watch. A way to steer. A way to make someone else do what he can't risk doing himself. Harry's stomach dropped. Me. Lupin's eyes softened, and he didn't deny it. Yes, Harry felt sick. The warmth of the map in his hands, the comfort he'd felt, those hadn't been kindness. They'd been hooks. Hermione's voice shook with anger. It tried to isolate him. It told him he didn't need me. It used Ginny. Lupin's jaw tightened. That's what these things do, he said quietly. They don't command outright at first. They suggest. They flatter. They offer you the thing you want most. Harry swallowed hard. Truth. Lupin nodded. Truth can be a lure, as much as a gift. Hermione's hands clenched. So, we destroy it. Lupin hesitated. Harry's heart hammered. Hermione stared at Lupin. Professor? Lupin's face tightened with conflict. If it is a Horcrux, he said slowly, destroying it may not be simple. Hermione's eyes flashed. The diary wasn't simple either. Harry destroyed it with a basilisk fang. Lupin's gaze flicked to Harry sharply. Harry's stomach tightened. You think the basilisk fragment in the box is connected? Lupin nodded slowly. Yes. Hermione's voice was fierce. Then we use it. Harry flinched. Hermione, there was ash, there was a claw. Hermione's eyes burned. Harry, this thing is trying to use you. It already has. If we hesitate, it will do worse. Harry's throat tightened. Lupin's gaze moved between them, weighing. Then he nodded once. Slow. All right, Lupin said quietly. But we do it carefully. And first, we secure Pettigrew. Harry's pulse jumped. How? Lupin's voice went grim. We take the rat, he said. Tonight, before he suspects, before he runs. We bring him here. We force him to transform. His eyes narrowed, and then we get the truth out of him. Hermione nodded sharply, adrenaline already in her posture. We can do it when Ron is asleep. Harry's stomach twisted. Ron. Lupin's voice softened slightly. Ron will be furious, he said. But he'll survive furious. He won't survive being used as a hiding place if Pettigrew bolts and draws black or worse into your dormitory again. Harry swallowed. Lupin folded the map carefully, ignoring the way it seemed to resist. He set it on the desk like it was a sleeping serpent. Then he looked at Hermione. Miss Granger, he said gently, I need you to be brave and quiet. Hermione's chin lifted. I can do quiet. Lupin's mouth twitched. That's the first lie you've ever told me. Hermione flushed, then nodded hard. Fine, I'll try. Lupin looked at Harry. His voice softened further. And you, he said, I need you not to blame yourself. It shows you because you are vulnerable, yes, but also because you are stubborn enough to fight it. Harry's throat tightened. I almost listened. Lupin's gaze held his. And then you brought Hermione. That matters. Harry swallowed hard and nodded. Lupin stood, moving with sudden decisiveness. All right, he said. We have little time. He opened a drawer and withdrew a small pouch of powder. Then another thin silver thread, chalk, a vial that glowed faintly. Hermione stared. What are those? Precautions? Lupin said grimly. If Pettigrew is what we think he is, he will have tricks. And if the map is what we fear it may try to interfere. Harry's stomach clenched. How? Lupin's gaze flicked to the map on the desk. By screaming, he said quietly. By calling for help. By making noise you can't ignore. Hermione's eyes narrowed. It can do that. Lupin didn't answer directly. He simply said, We don't open it again unless we must. Harry's pulse hammered. So we do this blind? Lupin's eyes sharpened. No, he said. We do this with our own minds, not the maps. He glanced toward the door. Come, Lupin said. We'll move now. They left the classroom under the cloak, Lupin moving with silent speed that reminded Harry suddenly that Lupin was not just a professor, he was a man shaped by war. They crossed corridors, climbed stairs, past sleeping portraits and silent suits of armor. The castle felt different at this hour, less forgiving. Every creak sounded like an accusation. As they approached Gryffindor Tower, Harry's stomach tightened painfully. Ron was in there. Ron was asleep, trusting. Ron had no idea. Hermione's hand brushed Harry's briefly under the cloak, an accidental touch that steadied him. Lupin stopped near an alcove and whispered a spell. The air shimmered faintly, like a curtain being drawn. Silencing ward, Lupin murmured. Just in case. Hermione swallowed. Harry's heart hammered. Lupin looked at them both, eyes steady. Once we begin, he said softly, we do not hesitate. Pettigrew will try to run. He will try to plead. He will try to twist you. Remember what he is. Harry's throat tightened. Hermione nodded sharply. Lupin exhaled, then murmured the password to the fat lady. The portrait swung open. They slipped inside. The common room was dark, lit only by embers in the fireplace. Shadows lay thick on the couches. It smelled like old wool and dying fire. Harry's breath came shallow. They crept up the stairs toward the boys' dormitory. Every step felt like treason. At the top, Lupin paused and listened. The dormitory door stood slightly ajar, like always. Lupin pushed it open silently. Inside, the boys slept. Ron's bed was nearest. Harry could see his hair, his face turned to the side, mouth slightly open. Harry's chest tightened. Lupin moved to Ron's bedside with careful precision. He did not touch Ron. He lifted his wand and whispered, "Accio rat." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Ron's pocket jerked. A small grey body shot out like a bullet, flying toward Lupin's hand. And in that split second, Harry saw it clearly. A rat, old and thin, eyes bright with sudden terror. Scabbers, Pettigrew. The rat hit Lupin's palm and twisted violently, claws scratching. Lupin's grip tightened like iron. Hermione's breath hitched. Harry's heart slammed. The rat squealed, a high, panicked sound that should have woken the whole dormitory. But the silencing ward held. The sound died in the air like a candle snuffed. Lupin looked at Harry, eyes hard. "Now," Lupin whispered. And, as if the castle itself sensed the betrayal of secrets, Harry felt something in his pocket pulse. Hot, angry. The Marauder's map, even folded, even closed, thrummed like a living heart, as if it knew they were taking its prey. The Marauder's map pulsed in Harry's pocket like a trapped heart. He could feel it through the fabric. Heat, rhythm, pressure, an insistence that had nothing to do with paper. It was as if the map was listening from inside the darkness of the fold, straining to hear what was happening in the dormitory. Lupin stood by Ron's bed, with the rat clamped in one firm hand, wand in the other. His face was carved into calm, but Harry saw the tension in his jaw, the tightness around his eyes. Hermione stood beside Harry near the foot of the bed, breath shallow, fists clenched at her sides, as if she could hold herself together by force alone. Ron slept on, oblivious, his face relaxed in the way people only looked when they had no idea their world was about to change. Lupin's voice was barely a whisper. "We move now, quietly." Harry nodded, though his throat felt like it had closed. Hermione nodded too, sharp and determined, even as fear flickered behind her eyes. Lupin stepped toward the door. The rat twisted violently in his grip, trying to bite. Lupin didn't flinch. He tightened his fingers, not cruelly, just enough to keep it from hurting him. The rat's eyes were bright with panic. Not animal panic, something smarter. Harry's skin crawled. They slipped out of the dormitory and into the corridor, Lupin moving with silent speed. The silencing ward still clung around them like a bubble. The castle felt muffled, distant, as if sound itself had been pushed away. They moved quickly down the stairs, away from Gryffindor Tower, toward Lupin's classroom again. Each turn of the corridor felt like a point of no return. Harry's mind kept flashing to Ron asleep, to the betrayal of leaving him in ignorance. But if Ron woke now, if Ron saw Lupin stealing his rat, Ron would fight them. Ron would shout. Ron would give Pettigrew the chaos he needed. Harry swallowed hard and kept walking. When they reached Lupin's classroom, Lupin shut the door and cast a locking charm that clicked like a coffin lid. The silencing ward faded, and sound rushed back in, breathing, the faint crackle of the lamp, the distant groan of pipes. Hermione inhaled sharply, as if she'd been holding her breath for an hour. Lupin set the rat down on the desk. The rat did not run. It crouched low, shaking, eyes darting, Harry's stomach twisted. Lupin raised his wand. "Pettigrew," he said softly. The rat flinched at the name like it had been struck. Hermione's voice was tight. It reacted. Lupin nodded once. Yes. Harry's fingers trembled. He wanted to reach into his pocket and grab the map and demand answers. But he remembered Hermione's warning and forced himself to keep his hands away. Lupin spoke again, voice low and dangerous. "Peter Pettigrew, I know you can hear me." The rat's whiskers twitched. Its chest rose and fell too fast. It looked cornered. Harry felt something cold settle into his gut. This wasn't a rat trapped in a classroom. This was a man who had survived 12 years by hiding. A man who had betrayed Harry's parents. A man who had chosen the shape of a weak creature because weakness made people look away. Lupin's wand tip hovered over the rat. "You have one chance to do this without force," Lupin said quietly. "Transform." The rat trembled harder. Harry's scar prickled faintly, as if the air itself had sharpened. Hermione's voice shook. "Professor, what if he—" "He will," Lupin cut in. The rat squealed suddenly and darted toward the edge of the desk. Lupin's wand flashed. Immobulus. The rat froze mid-scamper, stiff as a statue. Harry's pulse hammered. Lupin's face tightened. He looked at Harry and Hermione. "Stay back," he murmured. Hermione's jaw clenched, but she obeyed. Harry's hands curled into fists at his sides. Lupin lifted the rat gently, almost gently, and set it in the center of the classroom floor, where the chalk circle and silvery thread waited. Lupin had prepared it earlier, Harry realized. A containment ring, lines of chalk and fine thread shimmering faintly like spider silk. Lupin flicked his wand. The ring glowed. The air inside it tightened. The rat's eyes widened with sudden terror. Lupin's voice dropped. Finite. The immobilizing spell lifted. The rat leapt, straight into the invisible wall of the ring. It bounced back as if it had hit glass. It squealed, frantic, and threw itself at the barrier again and again. Hermione flinched at each impact. Harry stood rigid, breathing hard. Lupin's voice remained steady. "Transform, Peter." The rat froze, chest heaving. For a heartbeat, Harry thought it might comply. Then the rat's mouth opened, and it made a sound that wasn't a squeak. It was a laugh, thin, trembling, human in shape even through the animal throat. Harry's blood went ice cold. Hermione whispered, horrified, "Oh my God." Enough. He raised his wand. Homorphous. The spell struck the rat like a jolt of lightning. The rat convulsed, its body elongated, bones shifting under skin. Fur rippled like water. The sound that came out of it was halfway between a scream and a gasp. Hermione covered her mouth, eyes wide, but she didn't look away. Harry felt nausea rise in his throat. He watched the transformation unfold with sick fascination, paws stretching into hands, tail shrinking into nothing, skull reshaping. In seconds, the rat was gone. In its place lay a man on the classroom floor, curled on his side, coughing and choking as if he'd swallowed too much air. Peter Pettigrew. He looked smaller than Harry expected. Not in height, though he was short, but in presence. A man who had spent years compressing himself into something easy to overlook. His hair was thin and greasy, his face sharp with fear. He wore tattered clothes that looked like they'd been stitched together from whatever could be stolen or scavenged. And his eyes were wide and pleading and terrified, already searching for the weakest person in the room. Harry's stomach twisted with hatred. Hermione's voice came out like a broken whisper. "It's him." Lupin's wand was aimed at Pettigrew's chest. Pettigrew pushed himself upright slowly, hands raised in a shaking gesture of surrender. "Ah, Remus," Pettigrew squeaked, voice thin. "Remus, please." Lupin's voice was low and shaking with controlled fury. "Don't say my name like we're friends." Pettigrew's eyes darted to Harry, and something flashed there. Recognition, calculation. Pettigrew's gaze went to Harry's scar, and his breath hitched. "Harry," Pettigrew whispered, as if the name was a prayer. "Oh, Harry, you don't understand." Harry's hands clenched into fists so hard his nails bit his palms. You killed my parents, Harry said, voice low and shaking. Pettigrew flinched as if struck. No, no, I didn't. You betrayed them, Harry snapped, the anger finally breaking through. You sold them to Voldemort. Pettigrew's eyes filled with tears instantly, like a tap had been turned on. I was scared, he wailed. You have to understand. I was scared. He would have killed me. Hermione's voice cut in, sharp and furious. So you let him kill them. Pettigrew turned his watery eyes to Hermione, startled, then immediately tried a different tone, pleading, pathetic. Little girl, please. I'm not little, Hermione hissed. And don't you dare. Lupin stepped forward, one steady. Enough. Pettigrew shrank back, hands fluttering. Remus, listen, please. Lupin's voice dropped into something terrifyingly quiet. Where is Sirius? Pettigrew's eyes widened, and Harry saw fear sharpen into something else. Panic with teeth. Sir? Sirius? Pettigrew stammered. I don't know. Don't lie. Pettigrew's gaze darted to Harry again, searching. Harry, he squeaked. You can't let him. Sirius, he's mad. He'll kill me. Harry's breath came fast. Why would he want to kill you? Pettigrew's mouth opened and closed like a fish. His eyes were wild. Because he thinks I betrayed them. Because he knows you did, Lupin said, voice shaking. Pettigrew's face collapsed into sobbing again. I didn't mean to. He promised. He promised if I helped him, he'd spare me. Hermione's voice was cold. He promised. Pettigrew sobbed harder, as if the sound could drown the truth. I didn't want them to die. I didn't. I liked James. He was my friend. Harry's vision blurred with fury. Don't say his name, Harry hissed. Pettigrew flinched. Lupin stepped closer. 12 years, Lupin said quietly, voice raw. 12 years you let Sirius rot in Azkaban while you hid like a rat. Pettigrew's sobbing hitched. I couldn't. You could, Hermione snapped. You just didn't want to. Pettigrew's eyes flicked to Hermione with sudden hatred, then back to fear, and then Harry felt it, a heat against his chest, a pulse. The Marauder's map, still in his pocket, thrummed harder. Harry's stomach turned. He didn't want it open. He didn't want it involved, but the warmth spread through the fabric like pressure, like a voice pushing at the inside of his ribs. Harry's scar prickled faintly. Pettigrew suddenly jerked his head up, eyes narrowing. He wasn't looking at Lupin. He was looking at Harry's pocket, his gaze fixed there with sudden, desperate intensity. You, Pettigrew whispered, voice shaking. You have it. Harry froze. Hermione's eyes widened. What? Pettigrew's face contorted with fear and longing. The map, Pettigrew croaked. You have the map. Lupin's eyes went hard. How do you know that? Pettigrew's eyes darted wildly. Because I can feel it, he whispered. I can feel. He swallowed, then looked at Harry with sudden, frantic pleading. Harry, Pettigrew whispered, listen to me. That thing, that map, it's not what you think. Hermione's voice was sharp. You altered it. Pettigrew flinched hard. I had to. Lupin's wand lifted a fraction higher. Explain. Pettigrew's breath came fast. His hands fluttered uselessly. I couldn't stay as a rat forever, he babbled. I needed eyes. I needed to know when it was safe. I needed to know where he was, where Sirius was. Harry's blood went cold. You were watching. Pettigrew nodded miserably, tears spilling. Yes, I was watching. Because if he found me, he'd kill me. Hermione's eyes burned. So you made the map alive. Pettigrew shook his head violently. Not alive. Not like that. Then his gaze flicked to the desk where Lupin had set the folded map earlier. Harry followed his gaze. The map was on Lupin's desk, folded, silent, and yet the air around it seemed tense, as if it was listening. Pettigrew's voice dropped to a whisper, and for the first time he sounded less pathetic and more terrified. It started talking, Pettigrew said. Not to me, not really. It whispered. It wanted things. Pettigrew swallowed hard. Secrets, he whispered. Fears, confessions, the kind of things people think when they're alone. It fed on them. Hermione's face tightened. That's exactly what the diary did. Pettigrew's eyes went wider. Yes, he whispered, almost frantic. Yes, and that's why I tried to control it, but it wouldn't stay quiet. Harry's throat went dry. What did you do to it? Pettigrew's eyes darted. I found it in Filch's office years ago, he babbled. After Sirius, after the explosion, after everyone thought I was dead, I crawled back, I hid, I found the map, your father's map. Lupin's face went white with rage. You touched it. Pettigrew flinched. I needed it. Harry's hands shook. Pettigrew's voice rushed on, spilling truth in panic. It was powerful already. It knew everyone. It knew every corridor. It could hide me. It could show me where danger was. But it wasn't enough. Not with him hunting. Not with the Ministry. Not with Voldemort gone. But not gone. Hermione's voice was cold. So you made it worse. Pettigrew sobbed, then nodded. I used a charm, he whispered. Old. Blood. Not much. Just enough to bind it to me. Harry's stomach twisted. Blood. Pettigrew looked at Harry, eyes shining with fear. I didn't mean for it to become that, he whispered. I didn't mean for it to have a voice. I didn't mean for it to take... Hermione's gaze flicked to Lupin. He made a partial Horcrux. Lupin's jaw clenched so hard Harry heard his teeth grind. Pettigrew's eyes went wild. Horcrux, he squeaked. No, not like Voldemort. I didn't split my soul. But even as he protested, the air in the room changed. The lamp flame flickered. The temperature dropped. Harry's scar throbbed faintly. Hermione stiffened. Do you feel that? Lupin's gaze snapped to the desk. The Marauder's map, still folded, began to unfurl on its own. Slowly, like a mouth opening. Harry's breath stopped. Pettigrew let out a thin, terrified whimper. No, he whispered. No, no, no. The parchment opened fully, ink blooming without a spell. And then words began to write themselves across the center, dark and fresh. So much talking. Hermione's voice shook. It's listening. The ink continued, letters forming with sharp impatience. So much delay. The rat is here. The truth is here. Give me what I want. Harry's stomach turned. Lupin's wand snapped toward the map, ready to blast it to ash. Hermione grabbed his sleeve. Wait. Lupin's eyes flashed. Hermione, get back. The map wrote again, fast, angry. Remus Lupin. You always were so careful, so slow. James would laugh. Sirius's name did not appear, but the implication was there. Press the wound, twist it. Lupin's face went white with rage and pain. Hermione hissed. It's trying to provoke you. Harry's chest tightened. The map's ink shifted. Harry, you know what to do. You took the box. Harry's blood went ice cold. Hermione's head snapped toward him. Harry, Harry shook his head quickly, panicked. I didn't use it. The map's ink flowed like a smile. Not yet, but you will. You want to. Harry's throat tightened. He felt the map's words hooking into his anger. His desire to end this, to control it, to punish the rat, to stop feeling helpless. Pettigrew suddenly scrambled backward on the floor, eyes wide with terror. "Stop it!" he shrieked at the map, voice cracking. "Stop! I did what you wanted. I gave you secrets. I gave you everything." The map's writing paused. Then, almost amused, "You gave me scraps. I want a feast." Hermione went pale. It's not just bound to him. It's independent. Lupin's voice was low and shaking. "It's not the map anymore." Harry's scar throbbed again, harder. Pettigrew's eyes darted to the door. Harry saw it. The calculation. The rat's instinct. Pettigrew was going to run. Harry moved without thinking. Stepping forward, wand up. Stupefy. The spell hit Pettigrew squarely in the chest. Pettigrew crumpled, unconscious, face twisted mid-plea. Hermione exhaled hard, relief and horror mixed. Lupin didn't thank Harry. He didn't need to. His eyes were locked on the map, which continued to write slower now, as if savoring the tension. Good, Harry. One threat down. Now, the ink bled into a new line. Destroy me if you dare. Harry's hand will shake, Hermione will hesitate, Remus will feel guilt. And while you argue, the dots on the map shifted wildly. Hermione leaned in, eyes scanning. "Someone's coming," she whispered. Harry's stomach dropped. "Who?" Hermione's voice shook. "Sirius Black." Harry's blood went ice cold. On the map, a dot labeled Sirius Black was moving fast through the corridors toward the classroom. Harry's heart slammed. Lupin's face went pale, then hard. "He's here. He's coming to kill Pettigrew." Harry's breath came fast. "Or to kill me." Lupin's voice was grim. "No," he said. "If Pettigrew is alive, Sirius came for him." The map wrote one final line, dark and gleeful, as if enjoying the chaos it had summoned. "Open the door. Let him in. Let the past finish what it started." Harry's hands shook. Hermione's voice rose, frantic. "Professor, what do we do?" Lupin's wand lifted again, not at Pettigrew, but at the map. "We end this," Lupin said, voice low and shaking. Now, the knock wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It came once, firm, controlled, and it made the entire room feel smaller, like the walls leaned inward to listen. Hermione flinched. Harry's grip tightened on his wand until his fingers ached. Lupin didn't move at first. He stood in the lamplight with his wand aimed at the Marauder's map. Jaw clenched so tightly the muscles jumped. The map lay open on the desk, like an animal watching them. Its ink had gone still. But Harry could feel it, even from here. The faint heat, the pulse, the sense of attention. The knock came again. Lupin exhaled once, slow. Then he flicked his wand toward the door and murmured, "Calopatus." A sealing charm. The doorknob clicked and stiffened. Hermione whispered, "He'll break it." Lupin's voice was grim. "Let him try." As if in answer, the door shuddered. Not from a battering ram, not from a shoulder magic. The wood rippled faintly, wards straining. And then the handle jerked again, as if an invisible hand was testing each charm in turn. Harry's heart hammered. Hermione's eyes darted to the map. On the parchment, the dot labeled Sirius Black stopped directly outside the classroom. Then the ink wrote, neat and amused, "Hello, Sirius." Harry's stomach dropped. Hermione whispered, horrified, "It can talk to him." The map wrote again, "Come in. The rat is here. Your friends have him. Come Claim justice. Lupin's wand snapped down towards the parchment. Incendio, Lupin said sharply. Flames burst from the wand tip and struck the map. For a heartbeat, the parchment should have curled and blackened. Ordinary paper would have vanished instantly. Instead, the flames licked the edges and then slid away like water off oil. The map did not burn. The ink darkened, thickened, as if absorbing the fire. Harry's blood turned cold. Hermione's voice shook. Professor Lupin's face went pale with fury. He flicked his wand again, faster. Confringo. A blasting curse slammed into the desk. The desk splintered. The lamp toppled, glass shattering, the flames sputtering out. The map flipped into the air, unharmed, and landed neatly on the floor as if it had chosen the spot. Pettigrew lay unconscious nearby, face slack, hands curled. The door shook again, harder. Wood groaned. Hermione stumbled back. He's going to come through. Harry's mind raced. Sirius Black, the man everyone feared. The man Lupin looked like he was about to either embrace or kill. And the map, this thing, trying to pull Sirius into the room like a blade. Lupin's voice was low and tight. Harry, Hermione, get behind me. Harry did it automatically, though his legs felt like water. Hermione's breathing came fast, but her eyes were sharp. We need to immobilize Sirius as soon as he enters, she whispered. He won't listen if he thinks Pettigrew is here. He will listen, Lupin said, voice raw, if I can make him. Not into splinters, into a shock of force that snapped the sealing charm like thread. The wood flew back with a roar, and a figure burst through, cloak whipping, wand raised. Sirius Black. In the lamplight, he looked like a ghost made of anger, thin, wild-haired, eyes bright with feverish purpose. His face was sharp with hunger and sleeplessness, but there was a terrifying clarity in the way he moved, fast, efficient, like a predator who had decided tonight was the night. His gaze swept the room in a heartbeat. Harry felt those eyes land on him, and the air seemed to tighten. Then Sirius's gaze dropped to the floor, to Pettigrew, unconscious, human, real. For half a second, Sirius went completely still. Then his face twisted into something like a snarl. You, Sirius rasped. His wand snapped toward Pettigrew. No, Lupin shouted. He stepped forward, wand up, blocking Sirius's line of fire. Sirius's head jerked up. His eyes met Lupin's, and everything in the room shifted. Not magic, history. Recognition struck like lightning across Sirius's face. For a moment he looked almost undone. Then fury surged back, stronger. Remus, Sirius spat, voice shaking. Move. Lupin's voice cracked. Sirius, listen to me. Sirius's laugh was harsh and broken. Listen, 12 years in Azkaban, and you want me to listen? Hermione flinched at the word Azkaban. Harry's stomach dropped. 12 years. Sirius had been in there 12 years, and now he was here, staring at the man who'd ruined his life. Lupin's voice was low, shaking with emotion. He's alive. Sirius's eyes burned. I know he's alive. Lupin's throat worked. Then you know what that means. Sirius's wand hand trembled. It means I finish it. Harry's breath came fast. Hermione whispered, urgent, Professor. Lupin didn't move. Sirius, he said softly, you didn't do it. Sirius's eyes narrowed, almost feral. You think I don't know what they think? You think I don't know they blamed me? His voice broke into a hiss. They were wrong. They were all wrong. And he let it happen. Lupin's eyes shone with pain. Yes. Sirius's gaze flicked to Harry, sharp and hungry. And you, he said, voice ragged. You have his eyes. Harry's throat tightened. Sirius took a step forward. Harry's instinct screamed to back up, but he held still, because Lupin was between them, because Hermione was beside him, because if he ran, he'd look guilty. Sirius's voice dropped. You should have been with me. Harry's breath caught. Hermione's eyes widened. Lupin's face tightened. Sirius's gaze snapped back to Lupin. Don't, he snarled. Don't pretend you didn't think it. Don't pretend you didn't wonder if I'd come for him. Lupin's voice was raw. I wondered if you were alive. For a moment, Sirius looked like he'd been punched. His jaw clenched. His eyes flickered. Pain, grief, longing, swallowed instantly by rage. Then the map moved. It slid across the floor like something alive. Parchment, whispering against stone. It drifted toward Sirius's boot, like a loyal creature returning to its master. Sirius's gaze snapped down. The map unfurled in front of him as if presenting itself. Ink bloomed on it. Welcome home, Padfoot. Harry went cold. Hermione whispered, horrified. It knows his nickname. Lupin's face went pale. No. Sirius stared at the words, breathing hard. His expression shifted. Confusion, suspicion, then a flash of something like temptation, because the map wasn't just greeting him. It was offering him something. Ink wrote again, smooth and intimate. You want justice. You want blood. I can help. Sirius's fingers tightened around his wand. Lupin stepped closer. Voice urgent. Sirius, don't listen to it. Sirius's eyes flicked up sharply. What is this? Hermione's voice cut in fast and furious, because Hermione couldn't stand a mystery bleeding in front of her. It's someone tampered with it. It's like the diary. It's feeding on secrets. It's trying to... Sirius's gaze snapped to Hermione. Who are you? Hermione bristled. Hermione Granger. Sirius stared. Then his eyes flicked to Harry again. And you're letting children handle this? Harry flinched. Lupin's voice was tight. We didn't have time. Sirius's gaze dropped to Pettigrew again, and hatred poured back into his face like ink. He stepped toward Pettigrew, wand lifting. Stupefy, Hermione shouted on instinct, terrified he'd kill him before they got answers. Her spell hit Sirius's shoulder. Sirius staggered, surprised more than hurt, and his eyes blazed. Hermione froze, realizing what she'd done. But she didn't lower her wand. Sirius's voice was deadly. Don't. Lupin moved instantly, stepping between them. Hermione, he said softly. Stop. Hermione's chest heaved. Her eyes were wide. But she lowered her wand, shaking. Sirius glared at Lupin. You're protecting him. Lupin's voice cracked. I'm protecting the truth. Sirius's jaw trembled. He looked at Pettigrew, then at Lupin, then at Harry, like he was being pulled in too many directions at once. And then the map struck. Not with a spell, with a sentence designed to break a man. Ink wrote, dark and gleeful, he doesn't trust you, Sirius. He never did. Harry felt Lupin flinch like he'd been hit. Sirius went very still. His eyes lifted slowly to Lupin. The air in the room turned razor-thin. Lupin's voice was hoarse. Sirius? Sirius's laugh was empty. Is that true? He whispered, and there was something childlike in the question. Something wounded. Lupin swallowed hard. No. The map wrote again. Faster, sharper. Ask him about the full moon. Ask him why he didn't come. Ask him why he let you burn. Hermione's face went pale. Harry's stomach twisted. The map was digging into Lupin's shame, Sirius's loneliness, the fractures that had killed their friendship once already. Sirius's wand hand trembled. Lupin stepped closer. Voice raw. Sirius, look at me. Sirius's eyes were bright. He looked like he might explode. Harry's mind raced. They could not destroy the map with fire or blasting curses. The diary had been destroyed with basilisk venom, the silver box. The basilisk fragment, Harry's heart slammed. He looked at Hermione. Hermione looked back, understanding flashing instantly. She whispered, "The box." Harry nodded sharply. He moved, fast, decisive towards his bag. He yanked it open with shaking hands and pulled out the wrapped jumper. He tore it away. The silver box gleamed coldly in his palm, engravings catching the lamplight. The air shifted around it like something remembered. Hermione inhaled sharply. "Harry, careful." Sirius saw it. His eyes narrowed. "What is that?" Lupin's gaze snapped to the box, and his face tightened in alarm. "Harry," the map wrote, instantly furious. "No, not that." Harry's blood went cold. It was afraid. The map was afraid. Hermione's eyes widened. "It doesn't want good," Harry whispered. He crossed the room, heart hammering, and scooped the map up from the floor. The parchment felt warm and slick in his fingers, like skin. It pulsed violently. Ink writhed across it, frantic now, no longer smooth. "Stop! Put me down. You need me." Harry ignored it. He shoved the map into the open silver box. The moment the parchment touched the ash inside, the room went cold. So cold, Harry's breath fogged. The lamp flame guttered and nearly died. The map thrashed like a living thing, edges fluttering, ink bleeding. Hermione grabbed Harry's wrist. "Write its name," she whispered urgently. Harry's mind blanked. Its name. Hermione's eyes burned. The map, its true name. The map's ink erupted across the parchment like a scream. "I am the Marauder's map. I am your father's laughter. I am home." Harry's throat tightened. Lupin's voice was hoarse. "Harry, don't listen." Sirius stared at the box, at the writhing parchment, shock cracking his rage for the first time. Harry's hands shook. He stared at the map's words. "Your father's laughter, home." The map was wearing James's memory like a mask. Harry felt something break inside him. Anger sharpened into clarity. "You're not," Harry whispered. The map pulsed violently. Hermione thrust her quill toward him. "Use ink," she hissed, "not blood." Harry snatched the quill and scribbled on the inside lid of the silver box with shaking hands. Not the map's name. Not Marauder's map. He wrote what mattered. He wrote what it was. Horcrux. Hermione's eyes widened. "Harry." "I don't know its real name," Harry gasped, "but I know what it is." The moment the word hit the metal, the box shuddered. The ash inside lifted like smoke. The basilisk claw gleamed darkly. The map screamed without sound, ink spilling across parchment like blood. Lupin raised his wand, eyes hard. "Basilisk venom," he whispered, realization striking. "Harry, open the box. Just a fraction." Harry's hands shook violently. "What?" Hermione's eyes snapped to the claw. "If the claw still has venom." "It might," Lupin said tightly, "if it was preserved. If it remembers." Sirius stepped forward, voice rough. "What are you doing?" Lupin's eyes flicked to him. "Saving you from being used," he snapped, then immediately softened, voice raw. "Saving all of us." Harry swallowed hard, forced his shaking fingers to lift the lid a crack. Cold poured out like breath from a grave. Inside, the map writhed, ink frantic. "You can't. You need me. You need truth. You need revenge." Harry's scar throbbed. Hermione's voice shook. Don't listen. Lupin pointed his wand at the basilisk claw. Extractum, he whispered, an old, careful spell. The claw trembled. A single bead of dark liquid formed at its tip. Not black, greenish, thick, glistening. Venom. Harry's breath caught. The map thrashed harder, panic radiating off it like heat. Lupin's voice was tight. Harry, touch it with the venom. Harry's stomach lurched. He didn't want to. He didn't want to destroy something his father had made, even if it had been corrupted. The thought hurt like tearing a photograph in half. But the map had worn his father's laughter like a mask and tried to turn Sirius and Lupin into weapons against each other. That wasn't James. Harry's jaw clenched. He took the quill, dipped its tip into the bead of venom, and stabbed it down into the parchment. The moment venom touched ink, the map convulsed violently. A sound filled the room, not audible but felt, a pressure in the skull, a scream without sound that made Hermione stagger and clutch her head. Harry's scar flared hot. Sirius hissed, stumbling back. Lupin gritted his teeth, wand raised, holding the containment charm steady as the air went wild. The map's ink exploded outward in frantic, writhing lines. Not words anymore. Faces, fragments. Harry saw flashes, James laughing in a corridor, Sirius as a teenager with wild eyes, Remus hunched over books, Peter Pettigrew smiling weakly behind them. Then the images twisted, darkened, a shadow behind Peter, a cold, serpentine presence coiling through the parchment. A piece of something that wasn't human. Harry's stomach turned. He stabbed again, harder. The venom ate through the parchment, like fire through cloth. The map's edges blackened. The warmth vanished, replaced by a dead, brittle cold. Ink bled out in thick, dark streams, and then dried instantly into ash. The map screamed one last time, not in words, but in a feeling of rage and hunger and desperate denial. And then it went still. The parchment collapsed into grey flakes, crumbling into the ash inside the silver box. Silence slammed down. Real silence. The kind that came after a storm, when the air didn't know what to do with itself. Harry stood shaking quill still in his hand, breathing hard. Hermione leaned against the desk, pale, eyes wide. Lupin lowered his wand slowly, shoulders sagging as if he'd been holding up a building. Sirius stared at the box, chest heaving. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Sirius's gaze snapped to Pettigrew on the floor. Pettigrew was still unconscious, but his face twitched faintly, as if sensing the shift. Sirius's wand rose again, slow and deliberate. Lupin moved instantly. Sirius, wait. Sirius's voice was raw. He deserves it. Harry's stomach tightened. He didn't disagree. The hatred in him was a living thing. But Hermione stepped forward, trembling, and said, voice small but firm, "If you kill him now, they'll still call you a murderer." Sirius froze. Lupin's eyes flashed to Hermione, gratitude and pain mixing. Hermione swallowed hard and continued, voice shaking. "And he'll get away with it. In history. In the story people tell, you'll be the monster and he'll be the dead victim." Sirius's jaw trembled. He looked like he wanted to scream. Harry's throat tightened. He looked at Sirius. This man wrecked by Azkaban, by grief, by 12 years of being blamed, and felt something shift. Harry stepped forward, voice rough. "We need him alive," Harry said. "So everyone knows." Sirius's eyes flicked to Harry. They were bright, dangerous. "And then what?" he whispered. "They'll put him on trial? They'll give him a cell? They'll let him bargain?" Harry's jaw clenched. Then we make him talk in front of them, in front of Dumbledore, in front of everyone who let you rot. Sirius's breath shuddered. Lupin's voice was hoarse. We take him to the headmaster, he said. Now, before he wakes, before he runs. Sirius stared at Pettigrew, then slowly lowered his wand. His voice came out like gravel. Fine. Hermione exhaled shakily. Lupin moved to Pettigrew and bound him with ropes conjured from thin air, then added a full-body bind, then a gag, Hermione whispered. Good. Harry stared at the silver box on the desk. Inside it, the map was ash, his father's creation gone. He felt grief flare unexpectedly, sharp and hot, and he hated himself for it. But he also felt relief, like a weight lifted off his ribs. Hermione touched his sleeve lightly. Harry, she whispered, voice gentle now, you did the right thing. Harry swallowed hard, eyes stinging. It sounded like him, he whispered. It sounded like my dad. Hermione's eyes softened. That's what it does. It wears what you love. Harry nodded shakily. Sirius watched Harry for a long moment. His face had softened in a way Harry wouldn't have thought possible a few minutes ago. You're James's kid, Sirius said quietly, voice rough, stubborn as hell. Harry's throat tightened. You knew my dad. Sirius's eyes flickered with grief. Yeah, he whispered. I did. Lupin's voice cut in, quiet and urgent. We can do this later, he said. We move now. They wrapped Pettigrew, still bound, in an old cloak. Lupin lifted him with a levitation charm. They left the classroom together. Harry, Hermione, Lupin, Sirius, moving through the sleeping castle like a small, dangerous procession. As they walked, Sirius stayed close to Harry without quite touching him, like he didn't know what he was allowed to do with this living piece of James. Harry felt it, and it made his chest ache. Hermione walked on Harry's other side, eyes scanning every corridor, alert and fierce, as if daring the castle to throw another secret at them. They reached the headmaster's office. The gargoyle leapt aside at Lupin's whispered password. They climbed the spiral staircase, Pettigrew floating behind them, like a grotesque balloon. When they reached the office door, Lupin knocked once. The door opened almost immediately. Dumbledore stood there in his night robes, eyes sharp and awake like he hadn't slept at all. His gaze swept the group, then dropped to the bound, gagged man floating behind them. For the first time since Harry had known him, Dumbledore looked shocked. Albus, Lupin said hoarsely, we have found Peter Pettigrew. Silence. Then Dumbledore inhaled slowly, as if the air had become heavier. Sirius's voice was raw. And I want my life back. Dumbledore's gaze moved to Sirius, and something in it softened. Regret, understanding, pain. Come in, Dumbledore said quietly. All of you. They stepped into the office, and the door closed behind them. And somewhere far below, in the belly of the castle, ash settled into cracks between stones where laughter had once lived. The Marauder's map was gone. But the truth it had dragged into the light, true or not, twisted or not, was now a living thing in the room with them. And living truth was far harder to lock away. The end.